In a remote campground embraced by the embrace of a dense forest, a group of enthusiastic friends decides to immerse themselves in a weekend of nature adventure. They pitch their tents under the starry sky, excited at the prospect of escaping the daily hustle and enjoying the tranquility of the surrounding forest. Everything seems perfect, with the crackling of the fire and the reassuring sound of nature accompanying them in the early nights. However, during a dark and silent night, an unsettling atmosphere creeps through the trees. Strange noises, different from the usual nocturnal animal songs, resonate in the heart of the forest. Intrigued and slightly worried, the friends venture into the darkness of the forest to investigate. As they delve among the trees, shadows dance and move anomalously, creating a sinister choreography in the darkness. The dim light of their torches reveals indefinite outlines, but the source of the noises remains concealed. As the hours pass, the tension mounts. Suddenly, a sense of oppression is felt in the air. The friends begin to perceive a sinister presence, something ancient and powerful that insinuates itself into their minds. Fleeting visions of ghostly figures cross their field of vision, but they vanish into the darkness before they can be fully identified. At some point, they find an ancient altar surrounded by centuries-old trees, at the center of which is a mysterious symbol engraved in the ground. They understand that the forest hides a secret buried since time immemorial, a secret that now seeks to emerge and test their physical and mental resilience. The night continues with strange occurrences, trees that seem to move on their own, indistinct voices carried by the wind, and strange lights dancing in the darkness. The forest itself seems alive, pulsating with an ancient and unknown energy. As the friends continue to examine ancient manuscripts and legends, disturbing details emerge about the ancient ceremonies. They discover that the forest was considered sacred by a dark sect that practiced invocation rituals and offerings to mysterious powers believed to inhabit it. The energies released from those rites seem to have merged with the very essence of the forest, creating a connection between the supernatural and the natural world. In a desperate effort to understand the nature of this presence, the friends begin to examine ancient manuscripts and local legends. They discover that the forest has been, for centuries, the site of ancient rituals and mystical ceremonies, and now, the energies unleashed by those rites seem to have come to life on their own. With the rising sun, the forest returns to an apparent calm. The friends, tired and tested, decide to abandon the campground, carrying with them the indelible memory of that night. But as they leave the forest, they still hear the faint call of the shadows, a sinister melody that gets lost among the trees and accompanies them, like a spectral echo in their return to civilization. In an isolated campsite, shrouded in the nightly darkness and surrounded by towering trees, an avid hiker decided to break away from the crowd of campers and pitch his tent in a secluded area. The idea of spending the night under the stars, away from the frenzy of the world, excited him. Little did he know that this decision would unleash a series of unsettling events that would test his courage. Night fell with its dark cloak, and the hiker immersed himself in the tranquility of the surrounding nature. However, as soon as he settled into his tent, he began to perceive unusual sounds. Hushed whispers, almost indistinct, permeated the air. Barely audible footsteps, as if someone were moving stealthily around his tent. Initially, he attributed the sounds to nocturnal animals or the wind among the trees, but soon something made him doubt this rational explanation. Each time he decided to exit the tent to investigate, the mysterious sound abruptly ceased. An almost oppressive silence seized the environment, only to break when he returned to the safety of his tent. Intrigued and slightly concerned, the hiker began to suspect that he was not alone in the forest. The situation turned into a spectral game of cat and mouse. Every attempt to discover the origin of the sounds proved fruitless. He wondered if the apparent solitude of his tent concealed something more sinister. The feeling of being watched grew more intense, and his imaginative mind conjured increasingly terrifying scenarios. He decided to conduct an experiment. Setting up a makeshift camera, he hoped to capture some clues about the source of the sounds. The following night, with a pounding heart, he waited in his tent. The whispers and footsteps resumed, but this time, Armed with the ready camera, he felt more secure in confronting the unknown. As he scrutinized the images in the dim light of his lantern, he saw only the movement of branches, as if the wind were whispering secrets to the trees. Nothing concrete, nothing tangible. Disappointment and anguish seized him. Perhaps he was a victim of his own imagination, or perhaps there was something inexplicable that eluded the laws of reason. Determined to solve the mystery, he decided to explore the surroundings during the day. He found nothing strange, no sign of human or animal presence that could justify the unsettling night sounds. He began to wonder if he was losing his sanity, if the isolation and darkness of the forest were leading him toward growing paranoia. The following night, instead of hiding in his tent, he decided to stay outdoors, observing the darkness with vigilant eyes. The sounds resumed, but this time he would not succumb to fear. Advancing with determination into the darkness, he followed the whispers and footsteps. With a leap, he discovered the organ of the mystery. A nocturnal creature, humanoid in appearance but with pale skin and luminescent eyes, revealed itself among the trees. It didn't seem hostile, but rather curious. It spoke in a foreign language, whispering words the hiker couldn't understand. It was a nocturnal being, a guardian of the forest that had lived in the darkness since time immemorial. The hiker, surprised and fascinated, attempted to communicate with the creature. He discovered that he was not the only one who had heard it, but few had the courage to approach. The creature was not evil, only curious about those who dared to venture into its nocturnal abode. With the sunrise, the creature disappeared into the trees, leaving the hiker with a lingering sense of unease. Although he had learned something new about the forest, the presence of the nocturnal creature had unleashed a deeper fear. He discovered that the forest was not only a refuge for curious creatures, but also a place where unspeakable horrors lurked. In the following nights, the sinister sounds intensified. Dancing shadows transformed into spectral figures that watched him from the shadows. The hiker felt a malevolent presence closing in on him, a force trying to penetrate his mind and drag him into the darkness. The once harmless whispers turned into evil voices commanding him to do terrible things. In the grip of paranoia and terror, the hiker tried to escape the forest. However, nature itself seemed to conspire against him. Trees twisted like living limbs, roots snaked to trap him, and the path he had initially followed revealed itself as labyrinthine and inescapable. His solitary tent, once a refuge, became a prison amid the growing darkness. Night creatures, seemingly countless, approached menacingly, with luminous eyes and distorted smiles. The hiker was overwhelmed by a tide of spectral beings, screaming in impotence as he was dragged away into the eternal darkness of the forest. With the sunrise, everything fell silent. The solitary tent remained there, like a tomb in the heart of the forest. Other campers, unaware of the horrors that had occurred, found only the abandoned tent and some remnants of a campsite. In a remote forest, shrouded in the shadow of majestic trees, a group of adventurers decided to explore an old abandoned campground. The place was infamous for tales of mysterious disappearances and paranormal presences, but curiosity drove them to defy the darkness that enveloped those woods. Upon reaching the site, they chose an open area to set up camp. As they lit the fire and pitched their tents, the air around them felt thick with unsettling energy. Invisible presences enveloped them, and the crackling of the fire seemed to underscore a strange symphony of sounds suspended in the night air. Darkness descended upon the campground, bringing with it inexplicable phenomena. Objects moved on their own, dragged by unseen forces. Laughter and children's voices echoed in the darkness, though there was no living soul nearby. Tension escalated among the adventurers as they tried to rationalize the paranormal events unfolding. During the night, as they gathered around the fire, unsettling stories about the campground's history began to surface. They learned that it had been closed following dark events that occurred years ago. Unexplained disappearances, voices in the night, and sightings of spectral figures had terrified previous occupants. Intrigued by the prospect of interacting with the restless souls that might still wander through those woods, The adventurers decided to investigate further. Armed with torches and courage, they ventured into the dark trails, following the beckoning of those childish voices, hoping to unveil the secrets hidden by the abandoned campground. As they delved deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew denser. Shadows danced among the trees, and the wind whispered tales of sad events from the past. Suddenly they arrived at a clearing in the center of which stood an old playground, now ravaged by time. It was in that place that the invisible presences seemed to take shape. They glimpsed fleeting shadows of children laughing and playing. Their footsteps blended with the sounds of creaking swings and an ancient carousel that spun on its own, moved by an unknown force. At that moment, the voice of a child called out the name of one of the adventurers. With bewilderment, they realized that the invoked name belonged to a child who had disappeared in the campground many years ago. The voice, seemingly trapped in a limbo between worlds, pleaded for help and answers. Caught in a mixture of emotions, ranging from compassion to terror, the adventurers struggled to communicate with the restless souls. They discovered that the presences were trapped in the past, unable to leave that place due to tragic and unresolved events. The children, animated by childish curiosity, sought comfort and companionship. As the shadows danced and the voices resonated, the adventurers understood that they had to do something to end this situation. With the help of a sensitive spirit within the group, they attempted a liberation ritual, hoping to allow those souls to find peace. The forest seemed to react to their attempt. A gentle wind whispered through the trees, and the shadows dissolved into the darkness of the night. The playground fell silent, and the voices of the children faded away. A sense of calm pervaded the campground, and the adventurers felt that the restless souls had finally found liberation. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content.